To my youngest son, Nathan, my father's voice cut through the crystal shimmer of laughter like a blade through silk. The ballroom went silent. Champagne flutes hovered midair. Even the chandelier's glow seemed to dim as William Ashford turned toward me. To you, he said, his mouth curling in that familiar, icy smile. I leave exactly what you've given this family. He raised his glass high. Nothing. The sound that followed wasn't silence. It was humiliation, alive and roaring. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the entire crowd joined in, applauding his cruelty as though it were theater. Richard and Stephen stood beside the grand staircase, smug and untouchable in their tailored tuxedos. Their wives gleamed with jewels, their smiles polished for the cameras. My father lifted his glass higher, voice booming across the marble hall. A toast to legacy, to those who build it, and to those who walk away from greatness. The crowd cheered. I turned toward the doors, my chest hollow, my legs moving on instinct. My father's empire had just erased me in front of 200 people, and they'd applauded him for it. Nathan, wait. The voice was low, urgent. I turned. Howard Gaines, our family lawyer for as long as I could remember, stood near the entryway. His face looked worn, older somehow than when I'd last seen him. He glanced over his shoulder before stepping closer. Your mother, he said quietly, reaching inside his jacket. She knew this would happen. She prepared for it, 20 years ago. He handed me a thick manila envelope sealed with burgundy wax. The initials EA glinted faintly in the low light. She made me swear I'd give this to you tonight, on your father's 70th birthday. No sooner, no later. His voice shook. I've kept it hidden all these years. Now it's yours. What is it? The truth, Howard said. And maybe your mother's final gift. He pressed it into my hands, eyes wet with something that looked like regret. Don't open it here. Go somewhere safe. And Nathan, whatever you find in there, remember, your mother loved you more than any legacy. Before I could speak, he turned and vanished back into the glittering noise of the party. Through the tall windows, I saw my father laughing again, clinking glasses with senators and CEOs. My brothers posed for photographers, champagne bubbles rising between them like tiny gold lies. I walked out into the night, the envelope burning in my hands. The air outside Ashford Manor was sharp and clean, nothing like the suffocating perfume of the ballroom. I climbed into my old pickup, the kind of truck that would have made my father sneer, and just sat there. The mansion glowed behind me like a cathedral built for greed. The wax seal pressed into my palm. Yay, my mother's initials. My mother, who'd died of cancer when I was 12, who'd been the only person in that house to love without conditions, who'd told me once that kindness was its own kind of wealth. Her last words, waiting for me 20 years later. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been elbow deep in a surgery room, trying to save a golden retriever that had been hit by a truck. The owner, a single mother named Janet Miller, sat outside crying because she couldn't afford the full bill. We'll work it out, I told her. Pay what you can, when you can. That was my life now. A small veterinary clinic on 5 acres outside Boulder. Not glamorous, not grand, but honest. Every dollar earned meant a life saved, not a deal won. When the invitation to my father's party arrived, I was in the middle of castrating a stallion. Clara, my assistant, drove up waving the ivory envelope like it was radioactive. Guy in a Mercedes just dropped this off, she said. Inside, embossed in gold, were the words, "Your presence is required at William Ashford's 70th birthday celebration. Black tie. Family duty demands attendance." I almost laughed. Family duty? Where was that duty when my father skipped my graduation because veterinary medicine is a waste of genius? Where was it when he told the entire Ashford board that his youngest son had traded stocks for strays? I nearly threw the invitation away. But something, maybe the ghost of my mother's voice, made me keep it. I told Clara to clear my schedule and bought a plane ticket to Connecticut. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I was still foolish enough to think he might finally see me. Ashford Manor hadn't changed. Gold drapes. Ice sculptures of the company logo. Guests who smelled like power and forgot the word enough. When I walked in, conversation stopped. I could feel the judgment like heat. Richard spotted me first. "Well, look who dragged himself out of the kennel," he said. "Good to see you too, Rick," I said flatly. Stephen smirked. "Don't get too close. You might get fur on your tux." "Don't worry," I said. "It's rented. Like your morals." They didn't laugh, but they didn't have to. The moment our father descended the staircase, the room bent to him. He shook hands like a king accepting tribute, smiled for cameras like a man who'd never failed. When his gaze found me, the warmth died instantly. "Nathan," he said, his tone like cold glass. "You managed to dress appropriately." I was almost concerned. "Hello, Dad." He looked at me as if I were a stranger trespassing on his stage. And maybe I was. Now, sitting in my truck outside that glowing mansion, I finally broke the wax seal. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter inside, written in my mother's looping script. The first line read, "Nathan, if you're reading this, it means your father has shown the world who he truly is. Now it's time you learn who he never wanted you to become." My heart pounded. I turned the page, and everything I thought I knew about my family, my mother's death, and my father's empire began to unravel. What waited inside that envelope would burn the Ashford name to the ground. And for the first time that night, I wasn't afraid. "Mingle if you must," William Ashford said without looking at me. "But for God's sake, Nathan, try not to embarrass me. These are important people, not the kind of strays you usually drag into your life." He walked away before I could reply, disappearing into the glittering crowd beneath the chandeliers of Ashford Manor. The ballroom glowed with gold light and the smell of money, crisp suits, imported perfume, champagne that probably cost more than a month of my clinic's rent. Everywhere I looked, people laughed too loudly, their smiles sharpened by ambition. I took a glass of champagne from a passing tray and retreated to the far corner, content to watch the performance. At the opposite end of the room stood a podium with a microphone and a massive screen projecting the Ashford Holdings logo. A setup for speeches. I knew exactly what kind. Dinner dragged on like slow torture. I was seated with distant relatives who talked about their stock portfolios and Aspen homes while carefully avoiding asking me anything about my life. Every now and then, I caught someone gesturing toward me. A whisper, a smirk, the family disappointment on display for entertainment. Then, as the string quartet fell silent, the lights dimmed. The room shifted from chatter to reverence. My father stepped up to the podium, the air thick with anticipation. This was his favorite place in the world. On stage, commanding a room, every eye fixed on him. "Friends, family, colleagues," he began, his deep, deliberate voice filling the ballroom. "Tonight, as I celebrate my 70th year, I also celebrate the enduring legacy of Ashford Holdings, the empire I built from nothing." Applause thundered through the hall. William Ashford basked in it, eyes gleaming under the chandelier's light. "But empires," he continued, "must not die with their founders. They must pass into capable hands. Tonight, I announce my retirement and the division of everything I've built." I felt the collective breath of the crowd tighten. Richard and Stephen stood near the front, their wives glowing beside them, both pairs already savoring their coronation. "To my eldest son, Richard," William said, voice rich with pride, "whose intellect and loyalty have been indispensable, I leave our North American manufacturing division, the Connecticut and Palm Beach estates, the yacht collection, and $18 million in liquid assets." The crowd erupted again. Cameras flashed. Richard raised his glass, smiling like a man accepting divine right. His wife, Elise, leaned in for the perfect photo, her diamond earrings glittering like victory medals. William continued, "To my second son, Stephen, whose global vision has expanded Ashford Holdings beyond my imagination. I leave the European operations, our Asian investments, the Manhattan penthouse, the art collection valued at $12 million, and another $18 million in cash." Louder applause this time. Stephen took a bow, grinning that shark's grin of his, and his wife, Natasha, curtsied playfully as if she were receiving a crown. Then my father's gaze found me across the room. The laughter faded. The silence thickened. "And now," he said, voice colder than I'd ever heard it, "we come to my youngest son, Nathan." Every head turned. I felt their stares like 1,000 needles. I stood straighter, refusing to shrink. "Nathan," William began, pacing slightly, "was given every opportunity. The best schools, the best mentors, the open door to greatness. And what did he do with it?" He paused, letting the room hang on his words. "He turned his back on success to play doctor to animals." A few people chuckled. My brothers exchanged smirks. While his brothers built an empire, Nathan built a barn. While they learned to manage men and markets, he learned to muck stalls. While they became men of consequence, he became nothing. The laughter grew louder. I gripped my champagne glass tighter, my jaw locked. Therefore, my father declared, raising his own glass high, I leave to Nathan exactly what he has contributed to this family's legacy. Nothing. Not a cent, not a property, not even a seat at the table he abandoned. Silence. Then, slowly applause. First from the front, then spreading through the crowd until the entire ballroom roared approval for my public execution. You were never worthy of the Ashford name, he said, staring at me. Never worthy of your mother's memory. Never worthy of being my son. The clapping swelled to a standing ovation. Champagne glasses rose in a glittering sea as if celebrating a victory over some great evil. I caught the eyes of people I'd known since childhood, laughing, applauding, complicit. I set my glass down carefully and turned toward the door, walking out through the noise, through the laughter, through the hollow congratulations echoing behind me. I kept my step steady, even as something inside me shattered. Outside, under the pale glow of the estate lights, the night was quiet. I sat in my pickup truck at the edge of the circular drive, the manor's windows gleaming with false warmth behind me. In my hand was the envelope Howard Gaines had pressed into my palm just before I'd left the ballroom. Thick, sealed with burgundy wax, my mother's initials engraved, E.A. My heart pounded. Evelyn Ashford had been gone 20 years. She died when I was 12. At least, that's what I'd always believed. I broke the seal with trembling hands. The paper inside was thick and cream-colored. Her handwriting flowed across the page in soft, elegant strokes. My dearest Nathan, if you're reading this, your father has just shown his true nature to the world, and you need to know why I truly died. I read the line twice, maybe 3 times, before it sank in. I didn't die of cancer, my love. The cancer was real, but it was created. I was poisoned, slowly, methodically, by your father. The air left my lungs. My hands shook as I forced myself to keep reading. 6 months before my diagnosis, I discovered something terrible. Your grandfather, my father, Charles Bennett, was the real inventor of every patent that built Ashford Holdings. William stole them, forged the paperwork, and destroyed him. He died believing he was a failure. When I found the truth, I confronted your father. That was my mistake. Soon after, I became ill. He insisted on choosing my doctors, controlling every treatment, every visit. I recorded him. He would bring me tea every night, smiling as he watched me drink. Once, he said, you should have stayed quiet, Evelyn. Some truths aren't worth dying for. The words blurred. I wiped at my eyes and kept going. I gathered everything, original patents, forged signatures, bank transfers, even voice recordings. They're all stored in a safety deposit box at Union Federal Bank, box number 247. Walter, Howard Gaines, has the key. He swore to deliver this letter on your father's 70th birthday, the night he would cast you aside. By now, the royalties from the original designs have grown into a trust worth over $100 million, under my maiden name, Bennett. But that money is not the point. The point is justice. Inside the box is proof, documents, recordings, and a video testimony I made before I died. You can take it to the authorities, or you can walk away. The choice is yours. But know this, Nathan, your father didn't hate you because you failed him. He hated you because you remind him of me, and because you live with the conscience he never had. The letter ended with one final line. All my love, always, Mom. Beneath her signature was a note in smaller handwriting. Play the recording dated March 8, 2004. It's the one that proves everything. I called Howard immediately. He answered on the first ring. You read it, he said quietly. It can't be true. It is, Howard said. I've carried that evidence for 2 decades. Your mother made me executor of her secret estate, the one your father never discovered. She planned this night from her hospital bed. Did you know? I suspected. But without proof, there was nothing I could do. She wanted you safe. She made me promise to wait until tonight. When can we open the box? Monday morning, 9 sharp, Union Federal Bank. That night, I barely slept. Every memory of my father's cruelty twisted into something darker. Every absence, every insult, every cold glance. Suddenly, it all fit. By Monday morning, gray rain streaked the windshield as I parked outside the bank. Howard was waiting, his expression grave, a leather briefcase under his arm. Inside the vault, we signed the access forms. The steel drawer slid open, revealing organized folders, tapes, and a flash drive labeled EA recordings. Howard plugged it into his laptop. The first file began to play. William's voice filled the small room, calm and calculating. The dosage isn't working fast enough, Martin. Increase the compound. We can't afford a scandal now. Another man, Dr. Martin Hewitt, answered nervously. She's deteriorating already, William. More could trigger suspicion. No one suspects anything, my father replied. She has cancer. People die. Just make it happen. I pushed away from the table, nearly sick. Howard paused the recording, giving me a moment before I nodded for him to continue. There were 43 recordings in total, plus a video file of my mother, frail, pale, but fierce, explaining everything on camera. The documents proved every word. Forged signatures, financial transactions, offshore accounts. Howard looked at me. Your mother wasn't just brave, she was brilliant. She left you the means to end this empire properly. By noon, we were sitting in the office of Special Agent Diana Morse of the FBI, a woman who tried to investigate my father years ago but could never prove anything. She listened, stone-faced, through every recording, every piece of evidence. When it was over, she exhaled slowly. This is enough for murder, fraud, theft, conspiracy, the works, she said. William Ashford is done. I stared at the file spread across her desk. He's holding a final ceremony Friday, signing the transfer of Ashford Holdings to my brothers. Every board member, every investor, every reporter will be there. She raised an eyebrow. You want it public? I want them all to see it. Friday arrived beneath storm clouds. The headquarters of Ashford Holdings had been transformed into a cathedral of greed. Red carpets, media walls, security, and tailored suits. Richard and Stephen stood beside our father, radiant with arrogance, ready to inherit a stolen empire. I entered through the back with Agent Morse and 6 federal officers. The moment William raised his pen to sign the transfer documents, she stepped forward. William Ashford, she announced, her voice echoing through the hall. You are under arrest for the murder of Evelyn Ashford and for multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly. My father froze, eyes darting toward me at the edge of the stage. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in them. Behind her, a screen flickered to life. My mother's face appeared, pale, dying, but filled with calm defiance. Her recorded voice filled the hall. If you're seeing this, William, justice has finally arrived. Silence. Then chaos. Richard shouted something incoherent. Stephen lunged toward the agents, only to be restrained. My father tried to stand taller, but his hands shook as the cuffs clicked closed. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. As they led him away, I turned and walked out into the rain, the empire collapsing behind me. I thought of my mother's final words. You remind him of me. Maybe that was true. Maybe that's why I'd survived. The boy who'd been disowned in a ballroom of strangers was gone. The man who left that day carried something stronger than vengeance, truth. And in America, sometimes, that's the sharpest weapon of all. I walked straight down the center aisle, every eye in the room following me. William Ashford saw me first. His smug, controlled expression cracked, first confusion, then anger, as he noticed the federal agents walking just a few steps behind me. The murmurs began like ripples in water, spreading through the crowd of investors, executives, and journalists gathered for his grand retirement ceremony. Cameras swung in my direction. Stephen leaned into the microphone, his voice laced with disbelief. Nathan, what the hell do you think you're doing? I ignored him and climbed the stairs to the stage, my steps steady, my heart steadying itself against the roar in my ears. Howard Gaines and Agent Clara Morris flanked me, both of them carrying expressions that said there was no turning back now. The room felt utterly silent, the kind of silence that is weight. I didn't need a microphone. Before you sign those documents, Dad, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the hall, you should probably tell your investors that Ashford Holdings was built on stolen work. My father let out a short, harsh laugh, the same laugh he'd used all my life whenever I'd dared to speak. You've finally lost your mind, Nathan. You interrupt my retirement with delusions. They're not delusions, I said, facing the audience instead of him. They're facts. Hundreds of faces turned toward me, a sea of curiosity and disbelief. I took a breath. Every patent that launched this company came from my grandfather, Robert Haynes, Evelyn Ashford's father. He was the true inventor. William Ashford stole his work, forged the documents, and buried the truth. The crowd gasped. Reporters leapt to their feet, phones and cameras aimed at the stage. I caught sight of several board members whispering furiously, their faces draining of color. William's laugh faltered. "You pathetic boy. You're spinning fairy tales to get attention. Then maybe this will help jog your memory." I pulled out my phone and linked it to the hall sound system. A recording, dated February 15, 2004. The speakers crackled, and then his voice filled the room. Cold, confident, unmistakable. "The current dosage isn't working fast enough, Martin. Increase it. She's getting suspicious." Gasps broke through the silence. The recording continued, my father instructing Dr. Martin Hewitt to increase the dose of poison being slipped into my mother's tea. Calmly, as if ordering lunch. People stared at him in horror. Some covered their mouths. Others recorded every second. "That's fabricated," William shouted, his face gone chalk white. "That's AI or some deepfake nonsense." Agent Morris stepped forward, holding up her badge. "William Ashford, you are under arrest for the murder of Evelyn Ashford, corporate fraud, patent theft, and conspiracy." Two federal agents stepped onto the stage. My father turned to Richard and Stephen, who stood frozen beside him, their perfect lives crumbling in real time. His voice broke as he barked, "Do something." But they didn't move. As the agents cuffed him, he looked at me, eyes full of venom. "You destroyed everything I built." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed everything when you killed her. I just told the world the truth." They led him away. The crowd erupted, reporters shouting questions, investors yelling into phones, security scrambling to control the chaos. Richard grabbed my arm. "Do you even understand what you've done?" he hissed. "You've ruined us. The company, the estates, all of it. Gone." "Then it was never truly ours," I said, pulling free. "It was built on theft and murder. It deserves to burn." Stephen didn't say a word. His usual smirk was gone. He just watched me with wide, hollow eyes as though seeing me for the first time. I walked off the stage and through the crowd that parted for me, some looking disgusted, others nodding in quiet respect. Outside, the drizzle had turned to rain. Federal vehicles lined the driveway. I watched as they pushed my father's head down and closed the door behind him. Howard joined me. "Your mother would be proud," he said softly. I nodded. She knew I'd choose justice over silence. A reporter ran toward me, breathless. "Nathan Ashford, how does it feel to bring down your own father?" I looked straight into her camera. "He was never my father. Fathers protect their families. He destroyed ours." That line hit the airwaves within the hour. 6 months later, I stood in the main lobby of the Evelyn Haynes Memorial Animal Trauma Center, sunlight streaming through glass walls. It was the largest veterinary emergency facility in the western United States, built entirely from the funds my mother had hidden away in the Brennan Trust, untouched by Ashford Holdings corruption. The trial had been swift and devastating. Every shred of evidence my mother left, the recordings, the forged signatures, the notarized confession from Dr. Hewitt, played in court. The jury took less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. William Ashford, once the most feared man in business, was sentenced to life without parole. He never looked at me once during the proceedings. Even in chains, he kept that same smug posture, as if refusing to acknowledge defeat. Richard and Stephen sat in the back of the courtroom, their designer suits replaced by department store jackets. Every asset tied to the stolen patents had been seized. The Connecticut estate, the Manhattan penthouse, the yachts, all gone. 3 weeks after sentencing, I was closing up at the hospital when Richard appeared in the parking lot. He looked 10 years older, the arrogance drained from his eyes. "I need work," he said simply. "Anything. Kennel cleaner, assistant, I don't care." "Why here?" I asked. "Because this is the only thing real any of us ever had," he said. "Everything else was a lie. I want to learn how to earn something honest."